What if something sitting in your kitchen right now, something sweet, ordinary, and easy to overlook, once helped people survive in some of the harshest places on Earth? Not occasionally, but consistently, used by people who lived in extreme heat, who didn't always have access to food, who couldn't afford energy crashes, and needed something that actually sustained them. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This wasn't just survival food. This same thing was also used in moments of intention, during periods of fasting. In traditions where the body wasn't constantly fed, but carefully reintroduced to food. And out of everything they could have chosen, this was often the first thing they ate. Not something heavy, not something processed, something your body doesn't have to fight to handle. And now, modern science is starting to look at it again, not as a trend, not as a quick fix, but as something that may support how your body manages energy, how it responds when food is reintroduced, and how it transitions back into nourishment. So, the real question is, what were people noticing back then that made this such a consistent choice? And what if using something this simple for just a few days doesn't create a sudden change, but something more steady, something your body starts to recognize over time? Think about this for a moment. If you were living in a desert, no constant access to food, no packaged snacks, no quick sugar fixes, what would you rely on? Not just for taste, but for survival. Something that gives energy, but doesn't leave you weaker afterward. Something that lasts, because in those environments, a mistake isn't small. If something drains you, you feel it. If something sustains you, you remember it. And somehow, people kept coming back to it. But here's where it becomes more precise. It kept showing up at the exact same moment, right after long hours without food. The same timing, again and again. And that's what makes it interesting, because breaking a fast is a sensitive moment. So why this? Why something sweet? When the body is at its most responsive? Because the people who use this weren't guessing. They didn't think in calories or macros. They paid attention to something much more direct. How their body responded. Did their energy stabilize or crash? Did they feel restored or overwhelmed? Did their digestion feel supported or heavy? Over time, people learned to trust what their bodies were telling them. Because even now, in fasting traditions like Ramadan, after a full day without food or water, people still begin the same way. Not with a large meal, not with something complicated, but with something gentle. Something the body seems ready to receive almost immediately, which leads to something more specific. What is this food that appears in survival, fasting, and across completely different cultures and with the same purpose? It's something you've seen before, maybe in a bowl, maybe as a snack, maybe sitting in your kitchen right now without meaning much at all. Soft, sweet, easy to underestimate. Dates. One of the oldest cultivated foods in the world. Not just a fruit, but a food people kept returning to for thousands of years, especially in places where the wrong food could drain you instead of sustain you. Dates were trusted for energy, recovery, and that delicate moment when the body had gone hours without food. And that pattern never really disappeared. In the Quran, dates appear in moments connected to nourishment and support, and to this day, millions of people still break their fast with them. If dates are starting to feel a lot more interesting than they did a minute ago, subscribe now, because this channel is about seeing ordinary things the way people once did, before they became invisible. Now that the name is out in the open, what really matters is this: what made dates so reliable across survival, fasting, and everyday life? If you go back far enough, before nutrition labels, before modern diets, you notice something else about dates. They were not just eaten, they were relied on. In desert regions, a single date palm could feed a family for years, in a place where almost nothing else would grow. That is why it became more than a tree. It became security. It could survive extreme heat, be stored for long periods, and do more than simply fill the stomach. In those environments, the wrong food had consequences. Dates had to do more than simply feed people. They had to sustain them. They gave energy, but not in a way that left you weaker later. They supported people during long journeys, but also in stillness, in moments where food wasn't constantly available. Now imagine that moment more clearly. Not just being hungry, but your body actually paying attention to what comes in first. So the first food matters. And across generations, across different countries, the same choice keeps showing up. Not something heavy or artificial, but something the body seems ready to accept. The symbolism of the date palm itself was tied to life, to resilience, to sustained nourishment in environments where very little could survive. So when you step back and look at the bigger picture, it's not just about one culture. It's not just about one tradition. Across time, dates kept returning in the same roles: energy, recovery, and transition. When something keeps showing up like that, people were noticing something real. What made this such a reliable choice? And can your body still recognize it now? And this is where the story stops being historical and starts becoming practical. Because dates weren't used in complicated ways, just steady, intentional use based on what people noticed. In many regions, dates were eaten early in the day, when energy was needed most. Not in large amounts, just a few. The point wasn't quantity, it was timing. Instead of jumping into a heavy meal, people would start small, just a few dates, sometimes with water or milk. Then pause and let the body respond. That moment where your system shifts from empty to nourished. And instead of overwhelming it, you introduce something gentle, something the body can process without stress. And that's exactly how dates were used. Not to spike energy, but to reintroduce it. They were also given to people who were recovering, people who were weak, low in energy, or coming back from illness, not because they were medicine, but because they were reliable. Now compare that to how most people eat today, quick, distracted, often combining multiple heavy foods at once, not really noticing how anything feels individually. And because of that, it becomes harder to recognize what actually works, what gives you steady energy, versus what just creates a temporary spike. But when you strip everything back and go back to something this simple, you start to notice more. Because there's less noise, less interference, just your body responding to one thing at a time. That's the moment it becomes personal. Now it becomes something you can actually feel. At first, you might not notice anything dramatic, because this isn't the kind of thing that hits you all at once. It's more subtle than that, more gradual. But if you pay attention, you may start noticing small shifts. One of the first things people often notice is how their energy feels afterward. Not a sudden spike, not that quick rush you get from processed sugar, but something more steady, more controlled. It's not that you feel more energy, it's that you stop losing it so quickly. It's like your body is being given energy, because instead of going up and then down, you stay more level. A little later, you might notice something else, your digestion, not in a dramatic way, but in how things feel overall. Lighter, less heavy after eating. That sometimes comes after quick, sugary foods. And again, this connects back to how dates are structured, so your body can actually process what it's receiving. Then there's something even more interesting, your cravings. Especially if you usually reach for sweet snacks. After a few days, you may start noticing that the urge for processed sugar isn't as strong. Not completely gone, but reduced. And that's a different kind of shift, because instead of constantly reacting to cravings, your body starts feeling more satisfied, more stable. And all of this happens without forcing anything. No strict rules, no complicated system. Just a small change repeated consistently. And maybe the most interesting part of all is how natural it feels. Almost like your body already knows what to do with it. Like it recognizes it, not as something new, but as something familiar. So now I'm curious, if you were to try this for a few days, just 2 or 3 dates, at a moment when your body is actually ready for it, Would you notice a difference, not instantly, but over time? Would your energy feel more stable? Would your cravings shift? Would your digestion feel lighter? If this is the kind of thing that changes how you look at ordinary foods, subscribe here, because this channel is really about recovering meanings that got flattened over time. Things people once trusted, then stopped thinking about. Tell me this: were dates already part of your life? Or is this the first time you've really looked at them this way? So why does your body respond this way? And why did people trust it without needing to explain it? Because for a long time, this was just observation. People didn't explain it. They just noticed the thread. But now, we can start to see why this might be happening. It starts with the way dates deliver energy. Yes, they contain natural sugars, but not in isolation. They come wrapped in fiber, and that changes everything, because instead of hitting your system all at once, your body receives a slower, more controlled supply. Then there are the minerals. Dates are naturally rich in things like potassium, which plays a role in how your muscles function, how your nerves communicate, and even how your body manages fluid balance. So when you eat something like this, you're not just getting energy, you're getting support. There are also natural compounds, polyphenols, that have been studied for how they interact with the body, not in a dramatic or instant way, but in a steadier, less disruptive way over time. The fiber in dates also supports your gut, which may explain why things feel more regular, more comfortable, in moments where the body needed reliable support, not extremes. It's catching up to a pattern that already existed, a rhythm people trusted, because they could feel it. Instead of looking for something complicated, something engineered, you're looking at something simple that already works with your body, not against it. Your body isn't reacting randomly. It's responding to something it can actually use. It's your body responding to a combination of things, working together, in a way that feels balanced. And that brings us to something even more practical. Because knowing why is one thing, but what really matters is what happens when you try it consistently. But one good experience does not tell you very much. What matters is what starts repeating. So imagine you try this for a few days. Not perfectly, not rigidly, just consistently enough to notice what changes. Here is what that might begin to feel like. Day 1. At first, it may feel very simple. You have 2 or 3 dates, maybe in the morning, or after a few hours without eating. You might not think much of it. But if you pay attention, you may notice one small thing. Your energy feels stable, just more even. No sudden drop shortly after, just a smoother curve. Day 2. Now your body starts recognizing the pattern. Again, nothing dramatic, but that moment after eating feels a bit more predictable. You don't feel the need to immediately reach for something else. And that's interesting, because it's not about restriction, it's about satisfaction. Day 3. This is where some people begin to notice digestion. Things feel lighter. Less of that heavy feeling that sometimes lingers. It's subtle, but noticeable enough that you start paying attention. Day 4. Now something shifts a bit deeper. Cravings, especially for quick sugar. You might still want something sweet, but the urgency isn't the same. It's less reactive, more controlled, and that changes your choices without you forcing anything. Day 5. At this point, your energy throughout the day may feel more consistent. Not extreme, not boosted, but steady. You're not riding that cycle of spike and drop as much as before, and that creates a different kind of rhythm. Day 6. Now it starts to feel familiar, like your body expects this response. That moment of simple nourishment that doesn't overwhelm your system, but supports it. And you may even start preferring it over more processed options. Not because you have to, but because it feels better. Day 7. By now, the difference may be clear enough to recognize, not in a dramatic transformation, but in small, consistent signals. Your energy feels more stable. Your digestion feels more comfortable. Your cravings feel more manageable. And most importantly, it feels sustainable. like something you could actually keep doing. So if you wanted to try this in a simple way, what would that actually look like? Start with the basics. 2 to 3 dates, not a full bowl, not throughout the entire day, just a small amount at the right moment. The easiest times to try this are in the morning or after a longer gap without food. That transition moment, where your body is more responsive, more aware, more ready to receive something simple. And when you do try it, don't rush it. Eat them slowly. Notice the taste, the texture, and then pause. Give your body a moment to respond before adding anything else, because that pause is where you start to notice the difference. You can also combine dates with something small. A few nuts, like almonds or walnuts. This adds a bit of fat, which can make the energy feel even more stable. Or have them with something simple like yogurt. Again, nothing complicated, just small combinations that support what's already happening. Another option is to use them as a replacement. Instead of reaching for processed snacks, when you feel that drop in energy, try dates instead. Not as a restriction, but as an experiment, and just observe the difference. What you want to avoid is stacking them with heavy processed foods, because then it becomes harder to notice anything. Too many inputs, too much noise, and you lose that clear connection between what you eat and how you feel. So keep it simple, keep it intentional, and most importantly, pay attention, because this isn't about following a rule, it's about recognizing a response. And once you start noticing that response, even slightly, you're no longer just eating something. You're understanding what it does for you. Now, even though this is simple, it doesn't mean more is better, because dates are naturally sweet. They contain sugar, even if it comes in a more balanced form. So the goal here isn't to eat a lot, it's to use them intentionally. That's why keeping it around 2 to 3 dates at a time is usually enough. Enough to notice how your body responds, without overwhelming your system. If you eat too many, especially all at once, you may still feel that heaviness, that slower feeling. And that's not the effect you're looking for. So again, this comes back to awareness, not just what you eat, but how much and when. It also helps to keep the context simple. If you eat dates on top of a heavy, highly processed meal, it becomes harder to notice what they are actually doing. The clearer the setup, the clearer the response. Because this isn't about forcing a result, it's about observing what happens when you give your body something that has worked for generations. So instead of expecting something dramatic, just stay aware. Small signals, subtle shifts, those are the things that matter here. So when you step back and look at all of this, it's kind of strange. Something this simple, something that has been around for thousands of years, something that people relied on in extreme conditions, during fasting, during recovery, during everyday life, is now often overlooked, replaced by things that are more complex, more processed, more immediate. And that's why it feels different when you go back to something like this, because it doesn't try to overwhelm your body. It works with it, slowly, consistently, in a way that feels almost familiar. Because this is something your body may recognize, even if you've never really paid attention to it before. And that raises a bigger question. What else like this has been sitting quietly in the background, dismissed only because it looked too ordinary to matter? And maybe the real divide is this. Are you someone who just watches this, or someone who actually tries it? Because that's where this becomes real. And pay attention to what your body starts telling you. If you try it, come back and tell me what changed first. Was it your energy, your cravings, or the way your body handled that first part of the day? That is the part I really want to hear about. And if this kind of forgotten logic speaks to you, subscribe. Because there are more of these simple things, old things, trusted things, that never really disappeared. People just stopped seeing them. And once you start noticing them, You begin to recognize what older cultures understood without needing to explain it. Not trends, not hype, just things that have always been there, waiting to be understood again.